Welcome, everyone, to another edition of SCRC's Let's Talk Caregiving. I'm your host, Roberto Velasquez, President and CEO of SCRC, and I'm here, as always, with my co-host, Marta Rañón, our Executive Vice President. Hi, Marta.
Hey, Roberto.
Today we have a very special guest. Her name is Brittany Herrate. And Brittany is joining us here today. She is a professional caregiver. She's a certified nurse's assistant and has been a caregiver for other families, helping them with Alzheimer's and with their loved ones, as well as she's done a lot of outreach and education on the community about dementia. And what brings Brittany here to us today is that she is one of those caregivers, I should say, professional that is also a family caregiver. And what we wanted to talk a little bit about is those dynamics of going from being a professional caregiver to then being a family caregiver and some of the challenges that come with that.
Welcome, Brittany. I look forward to hearing from your perspective and your experience, how you've been able to manage these roles and responsibilities. You know, the face of the caregiver, Roberto, as we know, has changed throughout the years. And we know that it's usually a woman in her mid to late 40s, working at least 20 hours outside the home, caring for maybe children and elderly parents, and really trying to balance all of those responsibilities. But I feel like we're seeing, as we talk to caregivers and as we help caregivers throughout our communities, we're seeing a younger and younger caregiver. And having to balance all of that, that entails being a caregiver professionally and in the home, that is a lot. And so, Brittany, I really am looking forward to hearing from you. And maybe you can tell us how it is that you started becoming a family caregiver.
Hi, thank you for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here and share my story with everyone. So the truth is, I live at home with my two siblings and my husband. And one day, it was a regular day. We were just waiting for my husband to come home. He wasn't even a block away. He was just 2 minutes, 3 minutes away from the house. And I receive a call. And they say, hi, is this Brittany? And I'm like, yes, this is her. They told me, your husband just had an accident. He's on the street we live in. Some person just ran into him. He rides his motorcycle. So, well, it was a car impact into a motorcycle, and that's something that just made him fly from his motorcycle to the sidewalk. It was pretty big, the distance between his motorcycle and where he was. So I just rushed down there. It was hot. I just didn't know what to do. I was shaking. My hands were sweaty.
Right.
I got to the place where he was. He was conscious, but he couldn't move. Of course, we didn't want to move him either until the paramedics got there, because I didn't want to hurt him in any other way that could make things worse. It was just horrible seeing how he was in pain while they were trying to check him up on the scene. They got him onto the ambulance and they took him. During his time in the hospital, I was able to go see him for a few hours because of the whole situation we're going through with the pandemic and COVID-19. You're only allowed to go for about 2 hours to visit your loved ones, and you're only allowed to go if you have a negative test or of COVID, or if you have your vaccine card. Thankfully, I had my vaccine card, so I went in there and I was able to see him. The nurses allowed me to stay a little longer than usual because, well, since I am a professional caregiver, I would be helping him out with whatever it is he needed, and it would make the nurse's job a little easier, which I didn't mind. I was able to stay there with him. It was time I quote unquote enjoyed because I was able to be on there with him. But obviously it wasn't great because, well, he was in pain. It was a situation where he couldn't get up by himself, where just turning to his side was extremely painful for him. It was just all types of difficult.
So, Brittany, thank you for sharing that. That is such a horrifying experience, and it's so sudden. When you're telling this story, of your own personal experience and your husband's, it reminds me of all the stories that are told to us, especially by young care partners whose husband was in the military, and all of a sudden, they leave off warriors, they come back with PTSD and head traumas or limbs missing, and a combination of physical trauma and PTSD. And so you go from being a wife to being a caregiver. And it's a whole different kind of experience. I know from another caregiver who had told me, and who was also a nurse, was actually served in Vietnam as a nurse. So she saw trauma. She patched the young soldiers up overseas. She did all of that work. And then later on in life, of course, years and years after, her husband is dealing with diabetes and Parkinson's. And her role no longer is as a partner, but now as a caregiver. And it became so overwhelming and devastating because this person is now totally dependent on you, and the whole dynamics changed. So it was very, very challenging for her, as well as I'm sure it's been challenging for you.
Brittany, I wanted to see if maybe you can tell us a little bit how you were able to manage that situation that Roberto was just talking about. There's a lot that might have been going through your mind at that point. Yes, you had the experience, you have the ability to be a nurse, but that emotional aspect of caregiving, I'm just wondering how you were feeling, what you were thinking as you were going through this process, and how you were able to manage that situation.
Yeah, so everyone thinks that maybe because you're a doctor, you're a nurse, you're certified in this, you're a certified caregiver, whatever it is that you are, that maybe it makes things easier. And maybe it does when it comes to later on transferring them from one place to another. But on the point where everything is just right there, it hits you all of a sudden. It's all these certifications that you can possibly have do not help because it's something new and it's a different experience. I see my partner in pain and I feel the pain. I see my partner in pain and there's nothing that could have prepared me for this situation because sure, maybe some maneuvers are things that I know how to do, but those don't help me when I'm seeing him not being able to turn to his side, when I'm seeing him want to do something by himself and be independent and he can't. It's raw pain that you just feel, and it just makes everything super difficult. And like I said, all these certifications, they just don't make up for it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I know that is a common theme among family caregivers themselves, because many of them have been in the healthcare industry. Martha, you've worked in social services and helping the community and in government affairs, where you knew all the resources yourself. And then when you became a caregiver for your great aunt, which you've mentioned in previous occasions, it became very challenging to kind of sort things out as if you didn't know anything. And you did know.
Absolutely. I remember sometimes I would be so frustrated because I was trying to maneuver Medicare, Medi-Cal, her benefits, her doctors, and what was covered and what wasn't. And I just remember thinking, I know who to call. I know where to go. And yet I'm still having challenges. What about the person who has no idea where even to begin? And I feel that a lot of our caregivers, the people that we serve and we talk to, often find themselves in that situation. You might have been, like you said, a nurse. You might be certified, but it's beyond that. It's now the person that you care for, who's your relative, who's your partner, who's your mom, who's your child, that it becomes very helpless and sometimes can feel very hopeless.
Yeah, and I know also from my own experience as a caregiver, when my mom was needing help before she passed away, again, here I am, the CEO of Southern Caregiver Resource Center, and I've had 30 years of working with Alzheimer's and older adults and caregiving issues and developed programs for people in the community that have been really beneficial for families out there. And I have brothers and sisters, and they're all very helpful. All of them were incredibly helpful, including every single one of them. And when it came time to become a caregiver, I had to get advice from a professional, from somebody here, one of our family consultants here in the office, on how to even hold a family meeting, because it could have gone all over the place. Resentments coming up, you don't do as much as I do, these kinds of things. So I had to train myself so that I can help facilitate a family meeting. And again, here I am, the CEO of my company, but that's how important it is to get professional help, to get those resources to help you connect, because sometimes you just get clouded in the whole minutia of the family dynamics.
Brittany, I wanted to ask you, I know that you have incorporated some self-care strategies, and I'm hoping that maybe you can share some of those with our listeners, but also the motivation behind getting the professional help that Roberto was just talking about, and what you did to really take care of your mental health.
Yeah, so when everything started, maybe the first week, I noticed that I was doing so many things. I was handling work. I was handling my husband and all his paperwork, all his things, everything for the hospital. I was handling my little brother, which he was still going to school. And that whole week, I was just stressed. I was tired. I didn't feel like I was getting anywhere. And so I had to reach out. I had to reach out and I had to say, I need help, because it's impossible to do so many things by yourself and not need help. I think there's a point where we all need help and we all need to ask for it, because if we fall, let's say that I got sick and I didn't ask for this help, and I started getting sick and I couldn't do anything. If I didn't do anything, no one else was going to do it. And so then
Right.
after my fall, there's no one else to be there to help out. And so I didn't want to let myself fall, because I still had people depending on me, because I depended on myself, because it's just, we all need that help. And we all need, sometimes we say, oh, well, it's easy, I can do it by myself. But we always need at least 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes to ourselves to really focus on giving ourselves that time to put the stress aside for a second and think about how we can just, I don't know, work on ourselves and take out the negative sides that we have and go into the positivity of, okay, I'm doing better now. I can go back to working. I can go back to taking care of my loved one. I can go back and really do what I have to do.
Well, thank you, Brittany, so much for sharing, such an important message for families. It is, sometimes you feel like you're the only one, but you definitely have to accept help, seek help. It's so important as a family caregiver to be able to stay healthy yourself, or else if you don't, no one or less options are available, I should say, for the loved one that you're caring for. Martha, any final thoughts?
I just really want to make sure that people, as they're listening to Brittany's story and maybe they recognize themselves in that story, to seek assistance. You don't have to do caregiving alone. We're always talking about that. I know from my experience, sometimes it felt very alone. It was a very lonely journey. But we have professionals who understand what it is to be a caregiver, how to help you balance all of those responsibilities, and really how to listen and validate your feelings, because sometimes we feel frustrated. I'm sure, Brittany, you love your husband, but sometimes I'm sure it can be a little frustrating because you want to do certain things or you want to have a different outcome, and it's okay. It's just being able to talk to someone to recognize that you are human, and as a human, we need to really take care of our mental health.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that is so incredibly important, is taking care of our mental health. At Southern Caregiver Resource Center, we have so many resources that help, not only just with the assessment care planning and having your own personal private family consultant who's skilled and experienced social worker to talk with, but there's counseling programs, there's support groups, there's educational programs. And then we also have programs like our Calma class or REACH program that teaches family caregivers how to care for themselves when they're caring for somebody with Alzheimer's or dementia. So there's so many different resources, and they're all available at the touch of a computer or a phone call away. Well, that's all the time we have left for this edition of Let's Talk Caregiving. To hear more of our podcasts, follow us on your favorite podcasting platforms or visit our website at scrc.care. I want to thank Martha for co-hosting another important discussion, our guest, Brittany Herrate, and our audience for tuning in. If you're providing support to a loved one, you don't have to do this alone. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. To connect to our programs and services, visit our website at scrc.care or call us at 1-800-827-1008. If you live outside of San Diego and Imperial Counties, visit caregivercalifornia.org to connect with your local Caregiver Resource Center in California. To support our efforts and make a tax-deductible donation, please go to scrc.care and click on the Donate tab. And remember, SCRC is here for you,
Caring for those who care for others.